Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's so great to see you. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being part of the Governor's Early Literacy Educator Preparation Council. My name is Pooja Bhatt. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm Governor Kotek's Early Education Initiative Director. Each of you on the council just bring a tremendous expertise that we are so grateful for, coming from different walks of the early literacy landscape. And we recognize that so many people apply to be on this council, which is really a testament to the importance of this work. Today, we'll hear from the governor a little bit later in today's conversation. He'll share more a little bit about her vision for this work. But one thing that I really want to share now is that we are here collectively to find common ground in ways that really center what we know that children need to learn how to read and write. And in my conversations with many of you before today, one of you kind of shared with me a Maya Angelou quote that I think is really salient for our conversations that we'll be having in the council. And that quote is, "Do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better." So I say that to share that this is a space where we are coming collectively to find common ground. It's not a space that we are going to blame any group, teachers, principals, educator prep programs. We're really here to work together and see what we can do going forward. And the community agreements that the co-chairs will lead us to talking about a little bit later really get into the importance of finding that common ground so that we can kind of work together with some shared agreements. And some of the questions that we're hoping to consider as we do our work is, how do we empower teachers to be successful in teaching each and every child to read and write? And how do we create the conditions for the children to learn how to read and write through educator preparation standards? And then, how do we make sure we're supporting educator preparation program faculty in the preparation? So a lot of this we're going to get to as we have our conversations both today and throughout future meetings. But with that, I do want to get one really important part of our work out of the way, which is some really important things that we need to understand about public meetings, of which this is one of them. So council meetings for the remainder of this year, at least, will be virtual. So it will have Zoom access for all council members, and then they will be live streamed for those who are not part of the council to still view live. They will be recorded and posted out online, and we'll share the link in the chat for where to find that. And then council business must be in this public forum, as it is a public governing body. And that breakouts that we will use both today and throughout our conversations will be excluded from video and audio recording, but we will report out from the breakouts, and written notes will be made available as well. All right. So with that, I want to take just a moment to introduce and thank our gracious co-chairs, Susan Gardner and Rhonda Fritz, for stepping into this really critical role as co-chairs. We were really excited to select these co-chairs as leads and professionals within their educator preparation programs at Oregon State University and Eastern Oregon University. And we're really grateful to have their leadership as we kind of guide this important work moving forward. And with that, I want to open the conversation up for them. So I'll kick it over to both co-chairs Gardner and Fritz to introduce themselves a little bit, and then create introductions for each of you. So co-chairs.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be here. This really is important work that I'm very excited about. I will give you a little background on why I am so excited about this. One is that I was an elementary teacher for 19 years, and I did leave my teacher prep programs not knowing how to teach kids how to read, and learning on my own after a master's degree in reading that also didn't really give me what I needed to be successful and be empowered in the classroom. So I have a strong passion for this because of that situation. I am really committed to teachers coming out of teacher prep programs and feeling much more confident in their skills and abilities. And we've started to do that work at Eastern Oregon University. So I'm excited to share some of the things that we have done through the work on the council. And I'm really excited to learn from all of you as we go through this process. Go ahead, Susan.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Susan Gardner. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Dean of the College of Education at Oregon State University. And I am delighted to get to work with this great and amazing group of folks with so much expertise and personal experience coming to the table to work through these questions that the governor has proffered to us. As far as my background, I started out many careers ago, many decades ago, as a middle school and high school teacher. While I was focused on Spanish, I also taught some ESL classes as well. Throughout that process, came to have a deep and abiding interest in research and working on my PhD and moving into the academic world. That particular focus on educational research is kind of deep in my heart, even though now I'm not in a role where I do that, but I get to support everybody else's research and producing new teachers here at Oregon State University and our connection through the Oregon Association of Colleges of Teacher Education. I am the president-elect of that body as well. And I think from a more personal standpoint, I have two daughters along with my spouse, and both have struggled in reading at different points. Both have had IEPs, one currently still does, and seeing how they very much come to it from different places and different needs. So I think from both a personal and a professional standpoint, I'm really devoted to this work, and I look forward to learning about all of your own personal and professional perspectives as well. So with that, I think we are going to send it back to the group so they can get a chance to introduce themselves. And I'm going to bounce it back to Rhonda to start us out.
Thank you. So in the interest of time today, as far as introductions go, we will call on each of you. Please share with us your name, how you like to be addressed, and then your affiliation and your role. We will have more time to share even more deeper about who you are in our small group breakout sessions. So if we can just keep this part pretty concise, then we will move on to sharing more later. So Susan, if you'll go with the first.
I will, and then I'm going to actually just go down our list of folks so we can keep things moving along with our membership list. So again, I'm Susan Gardner. I use she, her pronouns, and my role is the Dean of the College of Education at Oregon State University. And I am going to pass it to Senator Dembrow.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Dembrow, and I chair the Senate Committee on Education, and very happy to be part of this. I was the chief sponsors of the literacy bill, and I look forward to its the partnerships that this is going to engender. And let me just say, you might have detected that I'm having some internet issues, so I may get off and try to restart my internet to see if I can fix that. But anyway, thank you very much, co-chairs, for stepping up to do this work.
And next we have on our list, Senator Weber.
Good afternoon. It's raining really hard here in Tillamook this afternoon, and I'm afraid that I'm going to have internet problems also. My name is Suzanne Weber. I am the senator from District 16. I have served in the House and on the Senate on the Education Committee as vice chair. I think it is very important, the work that we have to do. I have taught reading. I was in the public schools for 30 years. 22 of those years, I taught first grade and taught children to read under a number of different methods until I developed my own method that was successful. Something I think we need to keep in mind when we're doing this, and I know this is not the place for me to be saying this, but I think it has to be paramount, is that a lot of children have visual and audio problems that we also need to take into consideration when we are teaching them to read. There are children whose eyes don't track. There are children who have never been in a place that has been quiet before. There are all kinds of different issues that children are bringing to their literacy challenges that I think also need to be addressed. So thank you.
Thank you. And just a reminder, we will have more time for all of us to share more about ourselves. So if we can keep it brief, we'd appreciate it. So next is Representative Bowman.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Bowman. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm the state representative from House District 25, Tigard and Beaverton. Very grateful to be working with you all.
Thank you. Representative Wright.
Well, good afternoon. I am Representative Boomer Wright. I serve as co-chair on the Education House Committee and also on the Higher Education Committee. 31 years public education. Thank you.
Next is Director Cannon. Not with us. No, not yet. Okay. Director Rosilas.
Good afternoon, everybody. Dr. Anthony Rosilas, he, him, his pronouns with this esteemed group. Tony is fine for the conversation. I'm currently the executive director of the Oregon Teacher Standards and Practices Commission. And in this role, I serve as the state's chief accrediting officer for all teacher and educator preparation programs in Oregon. Glad to be here.
Next is Interim Director Spencer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sarah Spencer. I use she, her pronouns. I am currently the interim director for the EAC and have been in education for 40 years now.
Next is Interim Director Williams.
Hi, I'm Dr. Charlene Williams. I've been at the department for just over 2 months. And I've been in education for almost 30 years.
And I just want to add one clarification is that Dr. Williams is expected to go through this confirmation process by the Senate this week. So we'll be excited to remove the interim from her title hopefully soon. So.
Next, we have Dr. Archer.
Good day. Good day to all of you. So Anita is a good name for me. She and her is great. And my role here is really to use my 57 years of education experience as a college professor, as a teacher of children, as an author of interventions in reading, authors of books on explicit instruction, and I consult around the country. So I'm very glad to be in my home state, though, my state of Oregon. Though today I'm in Washington State in a hotel, but that's just the way life is.
Next, we have Heidi Brown.
Hi, I'm Heidi Brown. I go by she, her. I am filling the seat of an elementary principal for a small school, but we're so small that I'm also the superintendent for the district in my 26th year of education, and really just honored to be in the room.
Next, we have Julia Sparsa Brown.
Hi, I'm Dr. Julia Sparsa Brown. My pronouns are she, her, and ella. And you can call me Julie. I am currently a professor of special education at Portland State University, and I really bridge the fields of bilingual education, special education, and school psychology from almost 20 years in public schools before coming to higher ed. Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Next, we have Katie Danielson.
Hello, I'm Katie Danielson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Portland.
And next we have Makeka Overstreet.
Hi, I'm Dr. Makeka Overstreet. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a senior consultant in literacy for Education Northwest. I've been in education for 20 years. I come to this from being a literacy professor, and before that, a classroom teacher. So.
Next is Julie Reagan.
Hi, my name is Julie Reagan. I am currently working as a Title I teacher in 2 K-8 buildings for Lebanon Community School District. And this is year 26 in education for me.
And next we have Shanaz Sano, I'm sorry.
No problem. Hi, I'm Shauna Sano. I use she, her pronouns. I am in Corvallis, Oregon at an elementary school. I am a bilingual reading specialist. My niche is multilingual learners and literacy.
Next is Valerie Switzler. And then we have Jennifer Witten.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Witten. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm currently principal of Greenway Elementary School in Beaverton. I taught 4th and 5th grade and 1st grade for many years.
And I'm going to hand it back to Rhonda to introduce our guests and let them introduce themselves.
Thank you. So first on the list, we have Lynn Gardner.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Lynn Gardner, and I serve with the Educator Advancement Council, and I support the program assessments and research and learning. And prior to that role, I served in public education as a social studies high school teacher for 20 years.
Thank you. Next up, we have Zalika Gardner.
Okay, I have jets going over my house, so we'll see how this goes. Hi, everyone. My name is Zalika Gardner, third-year educator, elementary school, worked in higher ed for a while. I'm currently the interim literacy framework content and professional learning advisor with ODE. Really excited to be here.
Ken Greenbaum.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Ken Greenbaum. I'm the Senior Strategic Advisor for Early Literacy at ODE, just program staff supporting the work of this council and also doing some work to support the Early Literacy Success School District grants with the legislation that was just passed. So thanks and pleasure being here.
Alex Liebler.
Hi there, I'm Alex, use she, her, they, them pronouns, and I am supporting Pooja in the council. So if you need any help or need anything, just let me know.
Then I have Erin Weeks-Earp.
Good afternoon, it's Erin Weeks-Earp. I'm at the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, and I'm an education policy specialist there. My role is also to provide staff support to the council and the team. It's great to be here.
Jennifer Patterson.
Thank you so much. Jennifer Patterson, she, her pronouns. I work for the Department of Education as the Assistant Superintendent for the Office of Teaching, Learning, and Assessment. Such an honor to be with you today. We are home in OTLA to the first literacy team in Oregon. So we'll be hiring and starting soon with literacy director and others, and looking forward very much to spending this afternoon with you and continuing to sponsor and support in any way that we can the important work of this council.
Kristen Rush.
Thanks, Rhonda. My name is Kristen Rush. I work at the Teacher Standards and Practices Commission. I am in the Educator Programs and Pathways unit, and I oversee the buckets of work responsible for whole child practices as well as early literacy.
Thank you. And I decided I didn't really tell you my role. I am an associate professor at Eastern Oregon University, and you can call me Rhonda.
I think that Valerie Switzler joined, if it's not too late to introduce.
Valerie, do you want to introduce yourself with your name, your pronouns, and your role?
Sure. My name is Valerie Switzler. My family calls me Longkhayat, which is my Indian name. And I am currently the general manager for the branch of education for the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. So I just want to say hello, everybody, and thank you for letting me join.
Hey, did we get everybody then? Wonderful. Okay. So as we get started working together, as this is first of many meetings that we will share, how we do that work together is just as important as the work we are doing. So we want to propose these community agreements that we're going to discuss today, and we hope you've had a chance to review those that have been posted at the bottom of the agenda. But before we get into breakouts where we're going to dive into these a little bit more, you'll have an opportunity to discuss these with the other council members. Before we do that, are there any clarifying questions about the agreements and what they mean? I'm using teacher wait time. Okay. Again, we'll have a chance to discuss these in small groups. But before we do that, Rhonda, do you want to jump in and talk about the FISTA-5 model?
Sure. So this is what we are proposing as a way that we can, or a method for us to use for decision making. So the idea with this is that we can make a gesture on our screen to show how we feel about whatever is up in front of us. So if you hold up a 5, that indicates that you're in agreement. And so 4s and 5s definitely would be in that category. And even a 3 means that you are in agreement but maybe needs some discussion. If we see a 0, 1, and 2, then we definitely know we need to discuss further before we make any kind of decision. So if you hear us say FISTA-5, that's what we're talking about. So as we are thinking about these community agreements, think about where you fall along that continuum so that when we come back, we can share that with the group.
So we're going to, in a moment, join these breakout groups. And here are your tasks while you're in those breakout groups. First is to greet each other and just take 1 minute. Again, I know we have a plethora of rich and amazing experiences that we're all bringing to the table and a lot of dedication and passion for this. But we also want to make sure we can move things along. So 1 minute to introduce yourself and one thing that is important about your experience and expertise that you think is important for your peers to know. And then on the actual discussion of the ground rules, is there anything that you need to be a partner in our conversations that you don't see reflected in those draft agreements? And then go through that FISTA-5 that Rhonda just shared with everybody. And then we're going to have some time when we get back to share up. We have everybody back? Okay, so I think we were going to look at share out. Rhonda, did you want to lead that?
Sure. So we'll just share out kind of in order. Group 1 was Pooja's group. So if you want to share, if you had anything that you wanted to shift in the agreements and where you came out in terms of consensus on the FISTA-5.
I think we were all 4s or 5s in our group and no specific edits. But I heard a clear desire and excitement to engage in conversation with each other, especially in the breakouts. So no specific edits.
Awesome. Thank you, Pooja. Then we have group 2. Ken, you had that group?
Yeah, also strong consensus around the working agreements, no suggested edits or revisions. One question did arise to elevate is, how do you want to approach either like formally, informally, if agreements aren't being met, and how do we live into that? So that can remain a hypothetical in this moment, but that was raised. And also, we also spoke a bit to just, how we work and communicate together to provide insights into, how externally critique or resistance to the work might play out, how we navigate that. And this, again, coming back to this theme of knowing better and doing better with educators out in the field, and how our work might impact that, and how that relates to how we interact with each other.
Thank you. All right, Kristen, our group is next.
Yeah, so everybody, we reached consensus as well, all 4s or 5s. A couple folks did want to mention that everybody in this room has experience and expertise and a strong desire to do what's best for children, and that some folks in the group are in positions of power such that they can make decisions that are meaningful and impactful, and to when we're especially in small groups, allow for the people who are not in positions of power to speak, essentially recognizing your positionality and your positions of power, and then centering all of our work in what's best for children.
Thank you. And last but not least, Erin. Oh, no. Yes, Erin's group. Sorry.
And Jennifer agreed to share out for our group. Thank you.
Same as the other groups, we had a consensus with the 4 and the rest 5s. And some of us have had experience using this model before, and others were new to it. But I think it does give an opportunity to be able to pause and explain where you're at with a decision.
Great. Thank you very much. It looks like we're about to break time, and we actually are on time. I don't know if that ever happens in a meeting with educators. So we need to be back probably a few minutes before 3, Pooja, so we're ready to start when the governor gets here.
I think about 3 is good. I'm imagining people can't get too far astray from your computer. So yes, about 3 o'clock.
All right. Thanks so much. And we will see you all at 3.
Back. All right. Hi, Governor. Welcome. We're just coming back from break, and the floor is yours.
Pooja?
Yes.
Would you allow my video to be open? It was closed by the host.
Okay, let me
that should be good to go.
Thank you. Go ahead, Governor.
Alex.
Well, hi, everyone. It's good to see you all. Thank you for letting me join you for about an hour or so. I hope the first hour of the meeting went very well and got to know each other a little better and talk about, goals for this council. First of all, I want to say thank you for serving on this council. It's not every day that we have an opportunity to move forward on something that it's so critical in a way that looks at the future. It's not just what we can do today and tomorrow, but what we're going to do 10 years from now. And this idea of preparing our educators in new ways so they can be successful is going to pay dividends for many, many years to come. So I really appreciate your willingness to take on extra work to contributing to developing these recommendations that we need here. And just was so impressed with everyone who wanted to take part in this. So thank you very much. When we were looking at the applications, everyone's expertise and the different perspectives that they're bringing to this work. And a special shout out to our co-chairs, Fritz and Gardner. Thank you, co-chairs. You get to do extra work. So we appreciate you for doing that. Because you are leaders in your respective educator prep programs, all of you, this leadership is an opportunity to ensure that we come up with recommendations that are being done with educator prep programs. I mean, I have to really emphasize that. I think sometimes when we want to make change, it's, it's a very top-down approach. And our goal is to talk to the subject matter experts in this area so we can have that buy-in that we need to really make institutional and transformative change that we need for our students. So I want to thank you for all of that. And want to also thank our legislators for being part of this. Senators Dembro and Weber, Representatives Bowman and Wright, thank you. Because we need to make sure that the other side, the other branch is also a big partner in this. And you've all been practitioners as well. And so we really appreciate you being part of this. And lots of other folks to thank, certainly our staff at TSPC, at Higher Education Coordinating Committee, Department of Ed, and the Educator Advancement Council, thank you. This is a team effort, so really appreciate you all. I just want to say, there's no question that our reading proficiency rates here in our state are unacceptable. As someone who believes in what the ability to read and experience your world differently once you have that skill, we have so much more to do to help our children learn to read. So they can read to learn, they can read to explore, they can read to fully expand and fully realize their individual potential. So we all know this is an urgent issue, and there's no question that we have more work currently to prepare our educators and school leaders, but also for the future. So we have been hearing from many teachers who tell us a story or tell us stories after story that they weren't prepared to do the kind of reading instruction that they wanted to be prepared for. And when I heard of that a lot from educators on the campaign trail, could tell that it was something that they felt very strongly about, the emotions around saying, I'm not prepared, I don't have the resources, I don't have the support to make sure the students in my care are getting the help they need to read, was very palpable. And those are system failures, right? That's us not doing our job to make sure that our professionals in the field have what they need. So hence we have this council, and obviously we worked on House Bill 3198 during the legislative session as well to put additional resources into the ability to support early literacy across the state. I just want to be very clear too that there's always room for progress. There's always room for change. And it's not about blaming or shaming any group, any institution, any group of, people who are trying to do the right thing day in and day out. It does allow this type of effort in this council allows us to take a pause and really think about what we can be doing better. So I just want you to know, the goal is not to point fingers. This is all about just getting into the job, getting into the work, making sure that everyone can be successful. And I think, and I hope, just judging from the folks I know who are on this council, I think you share that too. This is just getting there and doing the work. And so I appreciate that a lot. And I think you've also reviewed some community agreements about how you're all going to work together. At the end of the day, our students, Oregon kids, are at the center of this. So sometimes we adults get in the way. I know you're not going to let that happen. We're going to do the best we can for our kids. We're going to do the best things we can to make sure that our educator professionals have what they need to make sure the kids have what they need. So, because at the end of the day, we need every child to be reading and writing to their fullest ability. And I have complete hope and faith in our students that they can get there, especially if we're all pulling together as adults to do the work. So I want to say that we've been traveling, visiting every county this year. And I am hearing that we're not seeing consistent reading and writing instruction in our schools. That's why I'm excited that the department's been doing a great job putting out a framework on early literacy, and that we're mapping towards an early literacy success vision for our state. And in that vision, each child must have access to consistent, culturally responsive and research-aligned literacy instruction. that all parents and caregivers must be supported as full partners in their children's literacy development starting at birth. And I want to really emphasize that. We know language development doesn't happen, and your ability to be ready to read doesn't happen the minute you walk into a school. There's so much more there, and we have to be supporting our parents, our caregivers, our entire communities to be part of that work as well. And I want to make sure that every elementary school teacher is prepared through the programs they have and the continuing education that will happen, so they can make sure our students are reading and writing in ways that, and the instruction is developmentally appropriate, culturally responsive, and is aligned to the research. And the research is, we know what it says, and we just need to put it into action. So I know there's more that we need to talk about today. The executive order that set you up, you have a lot of work to do. And I know you're going to be well supported by your co-chairs and the other staff support for this council to make progress, connecting to the early literacy framework that the department has provided, making sure it's aligned with what, that will build on the work that House Bill 3198 is going to do. And I know that this council, because of your hard work, is going to make a real difference for the future of our state. So I just want to thank you for doing it. And I'm just sit back and listen. I might have a few questions, but I really just want to be engaged for as much as I can today to hear your starting conversation. So I appreciate the opportunity to sit in. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to our co-chairs to take us through the additional details about the role of the council. And after that, the folks from Department of Ed will facilitate a conversation about what it might look like to map the early literacy framework onto the recommendations that you're going to be working on. So with that, again, I'm excited to see what you're going to do. And co-chairs Fritz and Gardner, back to you.
Thank you, Governor Kotek. I'm really, really honored to be here. I know we all are. So thank you for the opportunity and privilege to do that. So we wanted to spend a little bit of time now talking about the council's role and what that includes, but also some of what it doesn't include, because I think a lot of you have shared already that this is a big issue. And the governor's comments right now show about the systemic nature of literacy and reading and writing and all of these pieces, and that it really is a community system-wide perspective that we need to look at. So therefore, I think it's going to be really easy for us to want to look at other things, but that's not the charge necessarily of this council. So making sure that we are following the charge per the governor's executive order, making sure that we're focusing on the framework that is a wonderful tool and all these pieces that connect to that framework definitely are part of the council's role. And with the specific dates that we have here, December 15th is our first deadline that we have to develop recommendations to revise educator and school administrator preparation program standards for literacy instruction in grades K through 5 to align with that framework, and for us to really unpack that definition of research aligned that's provided in the order, and that we will include those standards related to knowledge, skills, and dispositions. After that, then we'll be able to build on that for our next deadline of March 30th to develop recommendations to revise educator licensing requirements for those grades and any other licenses or endorsements, including establishing a minimum level of coursework, hours of study regarding the science of reading, culturally responsive reading, writing strategies, and a focus in particular on students who experience disabilities and are emerging bilingual students. And then our final deadline for this council is to develop a plan by June 30th and a timeline for the adoption of new program and licensing standards by TSPC, and getting that to them no later than that June 30th date. And that includes an implementation plan, a timeline for developing those pieces, and again, in line with the framework. So the council's role, and then I'm gonna pass this back off for Rhonda after these couple slides to have some discussion about it. But remembering that our focus is to create recommendations as an advisory body to the governor and TSPC about educator preparation program standards for literacy instruction that aligns with that framework we've been talking about. The second piece is to create recommendations as an advisory body to the governor and TSBC regarding licensing requirements. Those are those dates we just talked about. And the third piece of our role is to consider implementation plan and timeline to those recommendations. In other words, what should the state policymakers consider related to supporting educator preparation programs within building faculty capacity? So again, I think it's really easy, given how big and important this work is, that we can kind of see the many other tentacles that it could have and should probably have, but just to keep focused on what our role is, the council. So in other words, it's not our role, it is not our charge to create recommendations for educator preparation standards in anything other than literacy. We're not going to talk about math. We're not going to talk about science. Those things are really important, not the purview and the charge of this council. Similarly, it's not our charge to create recommendations for any changes to the content standards that already exist for English language arts. And it is not our role to create standards for recertifying existing teachers in K through 5. So again, I think there's plenty that we could I use, the metaphor of a parking lot. We can put lots of things in the parking lot in these conversations, but making sure that our purview and our charge is what we keep focused on. So I'm going to pass it off to Rhonda.
Thank you, Susan. So at this time, we'll just open it up. We have a few minutes. If you have questions or comments that you would like to share in regard to our charge and what is and isn't part of that. So what questions do you have? Senator Dimbro? You have your hand raised.
I do, Susan. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have just clarification questions. We are focused on all EPPs here, including the independent colleges and universities, as well as the publics. I'm just wondering about that. And also, how are we going to address those teachers who are coming to us from training, having been trained in other states, which we expect a lot. We're entering a compact now, an interstate compact for teacher education, for teacher licensing, and this may be a parking lot issue, but just, something to think about, just how we're going to handle everyone. And if someone is coming in with a license already, if we're not going to be subjecting new standards on existing teachers here, how do we deal with veteran teachers who are coming into us from the outside?
Great question. I'm not sure who might be able to answer that, or if it's even answerable at this time. Yeah. Heidi.
Can I just pause right there, Co-Chair Fritz, and on the first question that Senator Dimbro raised about, are we focused on all EPPs, both private and public, is what I believe the question to be. Is that correct? Okay. On that question, I'd love Director Rosalise, would you mind just sharing just a high level of the program standards that exist apply to both public and private institutions? Is that correct? Can you share quickly about that particular? Yeah. And then also about the second question related to teachers coming from out of state, that would be a licensing question that would fall, I think, and they would be getting their license in Oregon for the first time, so that would fall under the purview. Is that correct?
Thank you, Pooja, for allowing me to speak. Regarding, let me take the second question first, which is, if a teacher comes in to Oregon from another state with a license, we've always had a reciprocal licensing process by which, if they were to come in and they didn't have particular preparation that aligned with Oregon's requirements, they would need to complete those requirements before actually getting a preliminary license Under interstate compact, what would happen is those teachers coming in from another state would receive either the preliminary or the professional license. However, the compact provides that if there are Oregon specific requirements that are not met, then those requirements, the commission can make those requirements a requirement for when that person gets their license renewed. So otherwise saying by the time their first license comes up, either 3 or 5 years, depending on whether it's preliminary or professional, then they would have to meet those requirements. So the commission will have to determine, based on, of course, the recommendations coming from this group, how well that the preparation programs and what we see from other states, how well do they align with the Oregon requirements, and what procedures or opportunities we might have to get those educators who don't necessarily meet all those Oregon requirements, what they need, so that way they can, what I would call, totally clear their license. So that's the first, that's a big piece regarding that. Senator Dembro, what can you say a little more specifically what your first part of the question was?
It was simply, are we talking about both the public colleges and universities and the independents?
Yeah, that's a really great point to make here. Unlike the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, where a lot of their oversight has a more greater effect through the public institutions, TSBC is responsible for approving anybody who wants to offer a teacher education program in the state of Oregon, whether they're independent or public. So therefore, whatever standards that we have in place for either program approval or for what we call unit approval, which are entire institutions, any institution would need to meet that. So they're the same standards, whether it's Pacific University or Oregon State University.
And can I just follow up with one last question? I assume there's a place for the community colleges here as well, those who are starting the the formation of our teachers, and that may also be something we need to think about.
Under House Bill 2166, that I think several of us on this call had worked on, the commission has the authority to consider preparation providers from the broadest sense, which could include the four-year universities, the graduate programs that provide licenses, but also community colleges and district level or ESD programs. We have a lot of grow your own, and now we just had this last week several of our first apprenticeships received BOLI approval. So those consortium, any of the programs that operate under those activities, the TSBC standards for educator preparation would apply to.
Thank you. Heidi, did you have a question?
Sure. I was just hoping someone could unpack that word dispositions for me. So when you're talking about teacher preparation, knowledge and skills and dispositions, I think I have an idea what it means, but I was hoping somebody could explain it a bit.
Dr. Rosales, do you want to take that one on?
Oh, yes. I speak a lot about dispositions, and that's been a focus in my almost 6 years here at TSBC, because there's knowledge and skills. Knowledge is the theory, and we've already talked about, I think Rep. Boomer Wright had mentioned in our little breakout group about the difference between the theory and the practice, right? Knowledge is many cases a theory where the skills are the way to practice and implement those theories. However, dispositions are the fundamental beliefs and values that any educator brings to the table when they do their work. And an example directly related to our work is that the charge that this group has is to consider how we utilize and recognize the funds of knowledge that our different cultures and students bring to the table. The ability to appreciate those funds of knowledge, the ability to reject a deficit thinking, which is, quite frankly, in my almost 30 years of experience, the number one thing that gets in the way of students succeeding is when adults believe that certain kids can't learn or that they can't do it. Well, it's a disposition. It's that value or that belief system that you maintain coming into the work that you do as an educator. And that is something that traditionally has been, there's been a lot of belief that we as people get into education for this. But I can tell you, it is something that in educator preparation, we need to continue to nourish. And we also need to consider new ways of assessing and helping educators grow in those dispositions.
Thank you. Rep Wright, did you have a question?
Well, thank you. My question has to do with the input that we have a possibility of using, and I'm referring to other states who have teacher prep programs that seem to be working well. Are we going to bring in any research from those? Are we going to talk about those? Or are we just going to go from the framework that we have from the Oregon's literacy framework and grow from there? So I've never been one that likes to reinvent the wheel. I think there are programs out there at the university that are doing amazing things. And we also have schools that are doing amazing things for our kids. So I just don't want to leave those things out, and I hope we have the opportunity to bring in that research as needed. Thank you.
Thank you. As co-chairs, we've already kind of had that discussion and asked Pooja to help us to gather some of that information. So I think that is going to be an important part of our conversations, is who's doing this work ahead of us and what can we learn from those other states. Any other questions or comments?
Just on the question of, since Boomer mentioned research, or you mentioned research, what sort of research are we, can we expect to be done as part of this project? Because I think there's a lot that could be done to get a sense of what's actually, what the curricula are in the different universities, what a teacher candidate can expect going through the different programs, and those sorts of things.
Pooja, can you speak to kind of the supports we'll have as we are working through this process?
Absolutely, yes. So there is a research and policy team that was introduced as guests earlier on from each of the education agencies here, the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, TSPC, Teacher Standards and Practices Commission, Educator Advancement Council, and the Oregon Department of Education all have staff kind of working together with our office in support of the co-chairs and you all as a council to really be responsive to the types of questions that you all are asking for. So we have a lot of things in the pipeline, but we didn't want to get too far ahead of you all. Just know that we were really waiting for this conversation to really inform the types of research and the focus that you really want to bring to the work, because as you all know, you can go really, really wide and really, really deep. And we really want to make sure that we're both, number one, sticking to the charge of the council and the deliverables that you have due, with the first one coming up in December related to the standards for approving educator preparation programs around literacy in K-5. And part of what we imagine our work to look like is going to be informed by the conversation that we have near the end of this meeting, which is really looking ahead. We have some ideas for a straw person proposal of some things that we could really look at together, including kind of promising practices from other states, but really wanted to use our discussion in this first meeting to really guide both the next meetings topics, as well as the structure in terms of work groups where you might want to dig in on any particular area. So all that to say, you're asking exactly the right kind of questions to be able to give the staff the focus that we need to get you the information to support your goals.
Thank you. Julie, did you have a question?
I do. So my question is, I'm from the Department of Special Education. We have a general ed licensure. So what licensures are we talking about in terms of the standards? Because I can think of several licenses. How about a reading endorsement standard? So what are we targeting specifically?
That's an excellent question. As I read it, the charge says elementary education and other related fields. So I think we do need that clarification. So I'm waiting for that answer too. So Pooja, I don't know if you have that or who we might ask about that.
So I think the short answer is that as we drill down into the details, that's really coming in some of our October conversations. So really I'll just share kind of high level to ground our thinking. This meeting is really about level setting, meeting each other, understanding the charge of the council, and getting a sense of what is the aspiration that we want to see in classrooms so that we can begin to think about how do we go upstream to figure out how do we prepare our future teachers to support what happens in classrooms. That's the why behind why we're really grounding in the Oregon Early Literacy Framework in this meeting with that optional information session last week. And going forward in October, you'll be hearing from Teacher Standards and Practices Commission staff about the current state. What are the educator program approval standards related to literacy? And then in future conversations, getting more into the licensing. So all that to say, we're going to unpack the different layers of the onion, particularly starting next month. And we'll absolutely exploring pre-reading as much as we can so that you can kind of get those wheels turning.
Thanks.
Tony, do you have a question?
Governor Kotek posted a question in the chat that I think we'll probably get into a little bit more when we talk about the current status of licensure in Oregon. But it does ask regarding the compact, what might we expect as far as an influx or of teachers coming into the state? And unfortunately, that's really an unknown because there's never been such a compact in this regard. But there is an important statistic that we'll talk more about in a future meeting, but I think is very relevant to this. And it goes back to Senator Dembro's question about what do we do with licensure and programs from people coming from out of state? In Oregon, we produce around, Oregon programs produce around 1,600 new educators for licensing each year. But I can also tell you that in Oregon, about half, and in some years even a little more than half, of those educators at any one time that are getting licensed into Oregon are coming from out-of-state programs. The Oregon is what we would call a net receiver of students from out-of-state programs. There are a few states that are suppliers where they have hundreds, and it's literally in some states hundreds of teacher education programs. In Oregon, we are now down to 15, and a future discussion would be is what do we do about school psychs and school counselors, because we're lucky if we produce a few dozen of those. But it is an important stat to think about that over half of our educators in Oregon, and especially those who are on emergency and restricted license, are currently completing their education preparation programs out of state.
No.
And I think keeping that in mind as we're talking about those licensure requirements will be really important, because we won't make a difference if we don't get a handle on both those being prepared in Oregon and those who are being prepared somewhere else.
I could just add, since I don't have a hand to raise here, I couldn't find it on here. I also think that if we show the country that we are taking this as seriously, that we're starting to talk about this, we'll have educators wanting to come with that talent to teach in Oregon because, I'll take it as a recruitment tool as well, so.
Julie, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I just have a quick question for Anthony or Tony. Did you say we could call you Tony? I am curious, in your statistics that you shared, did that account for people who are doing online programs? Do they fall into the out-of-state category? Because I know I'm working in a school, in 2 different schools right now, and I have 2 different colleagues that I'm working with that are in online programs.
Those numbers do include online, and actually a great many of the educators, particularly those on restricted or emergency license, since they are working right now in Oregon, when they're completing out-of-state programs, they're primarily online programs. And now we have seen more of our Oregon programs increase their online offerings, but many of the candidates are going to, I won't mention but there's like the big 3 that we call them, that many of you could probably guess, where hundreds of educators leave their programs every year and go to other states. And it's all online, individually based programs, sometimes competency-based programs, all things that we've been working with Oregon programs to try to grow and do more of. But yes, those numbers are included.
Do we have time for more questions, or do we need to move on to the next part?
If the question is quick, I think we have time.
Okay, Senator Denbrow, do you want to ask?
Thanks. Yes. This is a quick question. You know, the governor mentioned that in her conversations with individual teachers, many of them expressed a sense that they had been inadequately prepared to teach reading. And I'm wondering, will we have the capacity to do some kind of survey of teachers who are teaching in elementary school, for example, to get information from them? You know, obviously it would be hard to survey everyone, but if there could be some kind of survey instrument created to try to get that, to get information from them about their experience and their level of preparation, I think that would be very helpful. And I think, frankly, it would be good for them to feel that their experiences, that we're interested in hearing from them.
Thank you. I like that idea.
A quick comment. Michael, I'm going to be keynoting a conference on higher education programs with the science of reading next Monday. And they have some questionnaires already designed to get that information. So I will research that for you, because I agree that would be interesting. And so that teachers can fill in what did they know about this and this and this and this, so that we could get an idea of what is occurring.
Thank you, Anita. Julie, did you have one more quick question?
I do. I just want to provide a little bit of a caution for us. When we survey students, it's interesting of what their responses are. Like, we often ask our students, what they learned in the program about dyslexia, and our coursework is all about that. And they say, oh, we didn't touch that. So maybe looking at syllabi as well. I mean, so I think we need to have like, data from both sides.
Thank you. Good point. All right. I think we're ready to pass it over to Zalika and Jennifer to walk us through the framework.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're going to just launch by putting the framework in the center for a moment. And I know that there has been other shared learning spaces and collective consciousness established among this group around the framework. I want to start with also just a high level of gratitude. Many of you contributed to the authorship and or review of the framework. This framework is really the result of many hands and many experts, many hearts informing and infusing collective wisdom into the space. So the big idea here, why a framework? Well, it really serves as a North Star. It creates a sense of momentum. It speaks to not only Governor Kotek's call to action, but also an opportunity to have shared inspiration to fuel action and improvement, and importantly, to create common ground, coherence and clarity for all of us as we get real and get very specific about what matters the most in creating the conditions for students to develop fluency in their reading and writing lives, ideally in more than one language, and also for the educators and the principals who support that work to understand with incredible clarity as well what matters most. It really is a call to collective action, and it underscores that literacy, without question, is a community commitment that starts with parents and caregivers as a child's first and most important teacher.
Thank you, Jennifer. And so what we'll do here is I'm going to give a very brief overview as a reminder to anchor us for a conversation in breakout rooms we're about to have. I know many of us were able to engage last week. We've put the framework in the chat, so hopefully you've had a chance to engage with that ahead of this time. So I'll just speak to these sections briefly as I'll kind of set up the discussion that Zalika is going to frame for us here in a moment. And so we want to emphasize that these parts of the framework are synergistic. They all work together to ensure equitable early literacy learning for students. And we've represented them, you can see, as well as a tree to really illustrate that each holds an essential role in early literacy. We've chunked them, of course, into sections for clarity and for the sake of the document and framework, but these are really all integrated both in practice and in concept. So with that, also, before just highlighting each one of these, we want to affirm the roots of the tree, so to speak, those guiding principles, just connecting back to Director Rosilla's your comment around dispositions and some of the guiding principles that really inform the work, these beliefs around literacy begins at birth, families and communities strengthen school-based learning. Every child is full of literacy promise, that asset-based thinking. Foundational skills matter, and we'll speak to that here in a moment. Every child must be taught to read and write, the very charge that the governor spoke to at the start of the council's work. Multilingualism benefits everyone. And of course, perhaps most connected to the work here today, that educator knowledge and classroom practice are essential. And so with that, again, we'll put these in the chat before we zoom off to breakout rooms, but just to ground us in the prompt to come around, where have we seen these really be lived into and be successful? First is around student belonging as a necessary condition for literacy learning, that students need to be seen and heard in their whole person and their whole identity to be strong readers and writers. And this section also speaks to culturally responsive practices as the groundwork for creating those spaces. And we can go back one slide just so we can stay anchored in the sections. Thank you. Family and community partnerships. This section is speaking to the critical role of families and communities play, certainly as their child's first teachers of language and literacy, and also throughout their literacy journey. Section 3, oral language as the root for literacy development. Lots of root and tree metaphors today, but that's okay. This section really elevates the importance of oral language, both as a foundation for foundational skills and as a piece of cultural identity. So we really want to elevate both of those elements within that section. Section 4 outlines 5 models of reading research that really are helpful starting points to provide clarity on really the vast amount of research on literacy, and kind of puts together some common themes and illustrates some reading research that flows through the entirety of the framework. Section 5, of course, articulates foundational skills of reading, really illustrates learning progressions as critical to reading and literacy instruction, including for multilingual learners, and describes foundational skills that must be taught explicitly and systematically, a core idea throughout the framework, and that foundational skills matter for multilingual learners in both languages, oral language and other elements of language are described in foundational skills section 5. Foundational skills are certainly the floor and not the ceiling, which brings us to section 6, writing, reading comprehension, vocabulary and background knowledge. This section speaks to text-rich environments, background knowledge, vocabulary, and of course, reading and writing, both as reciprocal practices and spelling, instructional design for writing, and just writing as an immensely important part of literacy, including early literacy. Section 7, core instruction and assessment. The big ideas here around emphasizing access to core instruction as part of equitable early literacy instruction, and speaks to really thoughtful and culturally responsive literacy practices. And then section 8, while the needs and strategies described earlier being leveraged for multilingual learners and students experiencing disabilities throughout the document is important, this section really elevates those ideas, adds additional strategies and thoughts for consideration, including serving students experiencing disabilities, students with dyslexia, multilingual learners, and gifted and talented students. So with that, that was a lot of information, but we are trying to, continue to lay the groundwork and provide the base knowledge to frame up the work of the council moving forward. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Zalika to frame our breakout room session as a way to connect even more on these and these coming to life.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Ken. That was a lot. Thank you also to all of you, lots of familiar faces who came and had a chance to chew on this. We're just going to continue to chew on this because that's how meaning is made. And that's the work here, right? Is to make meaning of the incredible experience that's in this room at this moment. So we want you to really drop into that experience. It was a pleasure to hear in the intros. People have incredible depth of experience, both practitioners and doing the work of training practitioners and doing the policy work in just so many different ways. So we want you to drop into your experience and build some imagination for what this looks like in classrooms with children, centering really the goal that Governor Cote gave us at the very beginning, the children in Oregon and the classrooms that they are a part of. Where have you seen successful implementation of these core ideas of this framework? Right? Where have you seen that? Maybe you saw it as a parent, maybe you saw it as a student, maybe you've seen it as you continue to work with aspiring teachers, but where have you seen that? And then let's make it real, right? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like when you have student belonging in the center, when you have family and community partnership, when you have centered and brought forth oral language, when you really systematically present those and practice with foundational skills, when writing and reading are aligned with each other, when comprehension is a piece of the fabric, when core instruction is available to every single student, when multilingual learners are a part of the framework of the entire classroom, right? Where have you seen that? What did it look like? What were children doing? What were adults doing? What did it sound like? And what does that feel like? Right? Really thinking about those dispositions as well. What does it feel like in that space? And coming back to what Pooja said, when we think about the space that's been crafted today, a piece of that is to start to make these things real so that we can then go upstream and think about how to prepare the adults to create these conditions within the classroom. Right? So thinking about what does that look like and sound like and feel like, where have you experienced those pieces? And again, we will be in our breakout rooms. It's another chance for us to use those guiding principles that started us at the beginning when we think about our ways of engaging with each other. And then we'll have a chance to come back together, but really making meaning of these different sections of this framework. Where have you experienced those? What does that look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? Right? I'm excited to get to listen in one of these breakout rooms in just a moment. I am back.
Well, wonderful. I think we have some time, co-chairs, I believe, to do some share out from each group.
Yes.
Ken, do you want to start?
Oh, sure. We were group 2, but I'll start. That's fine. And again, for those in my group, if I didn't capture the entirety of our conversation, please do chime in. And this really rich discussion, lots of themes. I think what really resonated with me that I'm taking away is like the magic, that magical moment when students feel loved and accepted, and that language that they've learned at home has come to life in a moment where a teacher kind of like puts print and written language to like that story and those aha moments. So like that was one example that was just shared in terms of what came to life. We also spent a lot of time talking about the conditions necessary to like bring the framework and those practices described to life, what that means for teachers, administrators, wraparound support for our educators. Some beautiful examples of how social emotional learning kind of curriculum aligned with writing, and how that just really engaged and promoted teacher buy-in was like a beautiful story of that example. And lastly, we also spent some time talking about what this early literacy looks like as it plays out for children as they go along their educational journey in middle and high school as well, and community college. So we spent some time there in terms of how bringing the framework to life plays out for students in very real ways, or not. And so that was kind of the common themes. I think I'm going to toss it to group 1. I don't know who is group 1, but we'll go 2, 1, and then 3, 4.
I think 1 is Jennifer.
Yeah, I think that was us. Thank you so much, Ken, and deep gratitude for all the beautiful thinking. Gosh, so much to say, but Representative Weber, who just full gratitude and honor, and sitting among you as a teacher for many years of first graders. So she reminds us this is not something to take lightly. Teaching literacy takes intention, planning, engagement of every child, and ensuring that to a la section 1, the notion that belonging is a necessary condition. So children must feel like they're part of the whole group. And then this means about reading in all subjects throughout the day, and writing in books and writing throughout the day. And it takes a lot of time for teachers to structure this, for them to understand what this really looks like, what success really means for literacy for our young children. And it takes a lot of collective buy-in and partnership from parents. We also have to get really real about what we're doing to the nature of the school day, and how much spaciousness we create for young children and teachers. Before you know it, you got to go off to PE and music and recess, as Representative Weber said. Those are all important things, but how do we think about the flow and the conditions for learning how to read and write that need to happen alongside of all of the rest of the learning day? Susan Gardner echoed the timepiece also for not just for children, but for the adults in pre-service. So anyone studying to be a teacher, how much time do they get into that deliberate apprenticeship space? Senator Webo echoed that we have to build a culture of teaching where teachers want to continue. So not only joy for our children, but joy for our teachers. How do we create that, and what does that look like? We heard about the importance of noise, that kids need to be in small groups, reading with partners, moving around, singing, reading, writing, engaging with each other, celebrating each other's success and their own, practicing their phonemic awareness. It should be noisy, silly, active, that there are different learning styles, no one way of learning alone. The importance of building teacher competence and confidence in order to build student competence and confidence. The two are connected. So we have to invest in good teacher practice and knowledge. We also got to hear a lot about what it looks like for Section 5 foundational skills to be at play when students are getting to practice in real time important components of foundational skills that really matter. Also heard some thinking about class size, that we need to really think about class sizes in Oregon how many children, if we're going to get real about Section 8 and reaching all learners, how many children are in our K-3 classrooms. And that's a really important point of conversation, potentially outside of the purview of this council, but nevertheless something to talk about. And that the conditions, both in the physical space in a classroom, as well as the high quality instructional materials teachers may have available to them, to the number of desks, something as simple as just the access to basic materials, et cetera, is being so important. And then, of course, the importance and the reciprocity between reading and writing. And Dr. Anita Archer left us with, if we need writers, we've got to write.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So much wisdom. Group number 3, I believe, is Kristen.
Yeah, that's us. I don't know how to follow up with Jennifer, but we also had a very detailed conversation. Kind of started around the importance of families and the importance of family engagement, and how family engagement sort of decreases from the time that children are in preschool to the time that children are in about 5th grade, and how we can kind of maintain the robustness of family involvement that you see in preschool. We talked a little bit about the importance of mentorship and ongoing connection, especially as you're starting, clinical practices, getting into the classroom, and the importance of continuing to have, guided support both from the university and from the school district while you're still learning. 1-year MAT program is not enough to make a veteran teacher. And so how do we continue that support across time? We talked a lot about the importance of administration, the importance of training high quality administrators to support things like mentorship and new teaching, to recognize high quality teaching and allow other teachers in the building to be able to experience what that actually looks like and feels like and sounds like in a classroom. And we talked a little bit about how TSPC as an agency has really grown and expanded over time, and how we're starting to be able to have the capacity to actually interface well with ODE, and how we're really excited to be part of this council, as well as kind of moving forward as a model for other areas beyond early literacy.
Thank you. Fantastic. Erin, group number 4.
Thank you, Zalika. Group number 4 had a great conversation and brought lots of examples of how the aspects of the Oregon early literacy framework work in schools today and in Oregon. What that looks like often is some themes that came together were educators working together as a team to meet the individual needs of students, educators that have time to work together and to learn together about how to serve their students. Shout out to that idea that leaders and administrators that provide their teachers with that time during the day to keep learning and keep working on problems that are at hand for their classrooms. What it sounds like, we had plenty of examples that early literacy development can happen in many different languages, and sometimes the dual language programs in Oregon bringing reading and reading intervention in different languages alongside each other, which was a very successful intervention that was described. We talked about interacting and learning as teachers to work with parents as literacy partners. We talked about teacher candidates who are on practicum experiences, the importance of that cooperating teacher, and the training or modeling or intentionality behind that pairing of a teacher candidate who's practicing and a cooperating teacher who is modeling. we thought about the potential to connect the dots a little bit between the grants for schools and educators that are going out to implement the Oregon literacy framework, and some of the teacher candidate practicum requirements that might be a part of educator preparation standards that this council is thinking about. So in my group, did I miss anything? Jennifer, Ben, great, okay. Shanaz, okay. And group 5.
All right, that's me. I'm up. Thanks, Erin. Thanks for all of that fabulous thinking. We echo those things. We started in our group talking about what that master teacher magic looks like. And it starts with an adult that you can tell really loves those kids and is enjoying being in their presence, knows how to engage them, knows how to engage different kids who need different things. And that a lot of that is backed up by a system and administration that works together. So the teacher collaboration piece happening, the system across the school, and then the leadership. We talked a little about what does it look like to have leadership standards for what is expected in terms of knowledge in the administrators in a building, and what that can look like when there's a mismatch there. We talked a little bit about trainings available after you're in the classroom, like that continuous learning, and how transformative that can be, especially when you are doing the work and you can see sort of some of the places that you need to grow. You bring a different energy to those trainings. We also talked about what that means to be in the midst of change as a learner when you've really invested, because teaching is a whole body experience. And that there's a whole process of loss and mourning and grief that happens when change needs to happen around teacher practice, and how we support teachers to be lifelong learners in that way. We talked about oral language and what that looks like when it's a story and when it's told from a cultural perspective by members of children's culture, and what the rhythm looks like and what the pace looks like and what that enveloping in language looks like and feels like, and provides architecture then for the reading and the writing to land somewhere that feels familiar and culturally relevant. We talked about the idea of background knowledge and how teachers understand that and mine for that. And then were brought sort of together background knowledge with the terminology of community wealth. And that when we see these things that children are bringing as community wealth, we move toward that and cherish that in a different way. So thinking about the power of language. And that when we think about like, what does that look like in a classroom? It looks like a grounded adult too, who knows who they are, who brings themselves fully into the space and knowledge that they have. Both, we talked a little bit about knowledge and then skills and then disposition that they have around believing in the children that are in their care. They know don't need to know every single culture, but they know how to bring culture into the space and be open to the gifts that are being brought by the children. My very wise group, did I miss anything big? Make sure to open that floor. Right, really enjoy the conversations. Is there anything else before we just close this portion, right? Like last thoughts, anything anyone wants to make sure we're putting in the room, really building the imagination in the practical realm. It's possible. We've seen glimmers, right? We see it. We see that it's hard. We see that it's complex. We see it needs a multi-systems approach, right? It needs some skills and some development, but that's the work that we get to do and get excited about, is how we then go upstream to equip adults to be in these spaces and craft them for our young children. Are there any last thoughts or a last word that people would like to say before I hand it back to Pooja? All right. Well, on behalf of the ODE team, thank you so much for your attention. Again, as we chew on this and make meaning of this and bring it into what is real for our students in Oregon. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, OD team. Thank you so much for developing this beautiful Oregon early literacy framework. And I know it has had contributions from so many of you who are both on this call, as well as who may be watching or, just doing the work on the ground throughout our state. So thank you to everybody. Co-chairs, do you want me to take it or do you want to share? Okay. I am just really impressed that we're like literally on the minute timeline. So really want to just kind of, now that we have some of the grounding about where we're going, again, the Oregon Early Literacy Framework is kind of one piece of the aspiration that we seek. We wanted to kind of lay out a rough timeline between now and December, which is your first deliverable. And you look at this chart and it looks like a linear path. But if you read it, you see where are we going is part one, and then there's also a part two, and there'll be more of that as well. We look at this work as an iterative journey to really unpack what does it look like to manifest this framework in classrooms, and then what does it look like within educator preparation programs. So where we are right now is kind of just this big picture conversation in September. What does it look like in classrooms? It's a really preliminary conversation. And as we noted earlier, the where are we now is just as important to understand. And so this is where, as I said earlier, the Teacher Standards and Practices Commission, TSPC, will be giving us kind of an overview next month about where we are in terms of the current standards for educator preparation programs. We had kind of mapped out, we should bring promising practices to the fore to this group, as well as some of those national comparisons, and to the extent that comparisons are even valuable. And it's important to understand what can we learn from comparisons and what do we want to be cautious about in making cross-state comparisons, because every state's context is really unique. And then in November, one of the considerations that the co-chairs and the staff team have discussed is what would it look like in the fall to really have intentional engagement with additional educator preparation programs in our state, for them to be able to share what is needed and what is already in place. Again, really trying to build awareness so that we have informed engagement and we're all operating on similar information. And then the component in December is really around building off of the work over the next couple of months, drilling down into at least a high level framework of what those program approval standards might begin to look like, based again on the current state and kind of where what we have talked about today is kind of the aspiration. So given that, we wanted to engage you all in a conversation about the specific information or structure that is needed to create the conditions for you to feel informed in order to meet the charge of the council. So we have designated about 3 hours of regular council meetings, and we're hoping to send out the dates for that in the next day or so. Where you have dates from now until June that you can just get on your calendar, of about 3 hours per month of council meetings, plus an additional 1.5 hour hold in case you all decide to do work groups, or if you want to have information sessions such as the one that we had last week that we tested out about the Oregon Early Literacy Framework. Perhaps you might want an information session on a different topic that pertains to your work in future months. So that's kind of the rough concept that we're thinking about. Again, every month we would have about 3 hours for the council meeting, plus 1.5 hours each month for work groups or information session. The caveat is that we're really hoping either in October or November to have 2 3-hour meetings due to the deadlines that we have coming up in December. So again, we'll share dates hopefully tomorrow with all of you so that you can begin to get those on, we can get those calendared for you all. but just wanted to get feedback about some of the example items that we could really dig into either at our future council meetings or at the work groups or information sessions. And I just want to uplift a couple of the things that have already been put out as suggestions in this space, is the idea of bringing in information about what current elementary teachers experience and what they think are some of the needs in terms of preparation. So surveying teachers was one idea, a scan of what other states are doing and what we might learn from them. And then another point about syllabi are 3 different suggestions that I've heard so far. So I want to just put those out into the space in addition to these examples, to really create an opportunity for you all to inform what information is in front of you for the recommendations. So anybody kind of want to share and start us off? Go ahead, Rep. Wright. I think I saw your hand.
Thank you. Just so I understand. So we're going to have 3-hour meetings a month, once a month, and then maybe a hour and a half sharing session, so to speak. So are we to contact our co-chairs and let them know what we're thinking about, what we'd like to suggest, what we may bring to the meeting, or do we wait and make suggestions? Do we contact other ODE or TSPC concerning, what may be happening in other states and coordinate with them concerning the information? I'm a little mystified about what the process for making suggestions and recommendations individually. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that question, Rep. Wright. I'll start answering, and of course, the co-chairs will jump in. So this conversation that we're having right now is the conversation that we really wanted to make sure everybody in the council has an opportunity to shape specific topics that you want to make sure we dig in on that relate to your work that's upcoming. And so again, the surveying teachers, what other states are doing. So for example, we're going to take that information, that suggestion, Rep. Wright, that you had, and we were already kind of thinking that it might be helpful for your work to understand what other educator preparation program approval standards look like in other states related to literacy. So that then you have that information going into some of these meetings that we have in October as kind of a baseline of information. Does that make sense? So that's one part of response to your question. And then the other part in terms of the design of these meetings is that this conversation is really helpful because your co-chairs are really designing the meeting agendas and partnership and support from the staff. So you could obviously reach out to us at the governor's office, and I can be a conduit for staff. And then I don't want to volunteer the co-chairs, but I'll hand it over to you if you want to share a little bit about kind of your perspective on the representative's questions.
I would just echo everything that Pooja just said. And I think, and I don't want to speak for Rhonda, but I imagine she would say, we would also be happy to be that conduit. So if you all bring anything to us, we can bring it back, because we will be meeting too to plan out the agendas and talk through, just like this beautifully choreographed meeting today was with much of their support and help. So I imagine we're going to continue doing that. And then we can bring, any ideas that you might have that percolate after these meetings or in between meetings.
Yes, I echo what Susan said. You're more than welcome to contact me directly.
And I see Jennifer. Go ahead, Whitten.
Yeah, just for a suggestion work group, I definitely need some background on like the current standards, and I would love to see what that looks like transferred into the syllabi of just some samples of that, what that looks like. And then I think as well how those are assessed, so that like a proficiency of the standards. I haven't looked at those in really a long time since I think I was doing those. And And then I think also if there are some institutions that are already, somebody mentioned that they're already have developed some classes, what is a sample of what some of the components of the framework that they have already incorporated into some classes, what that looks like, so that we can kind of see and be able to go through and say, like, yes, these really important characteristics and features from the framework are this is what it looks like already in a class. I think that would be really helpful for the next month.
Wonderful. And just a quick clarifying question on your assessment question. Can you say more about, there's so many different levels of assessment. Can you say more about, are you talking about how the state kind of reviews whether or not an educator preparation program meets the standards? Is that what you were referring to?
No, I think how the teacher candidate demonstrates proficiency of the standard.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Senator Dembro?
Yeah, thanks, Pooja. Related to the special focus meetings, I assume they'll be recorded so that, you know, if we can't make them, we can still learn from them.
Correct.
One of the areas that I would appreciate learning more about is student teaching, because, you know, I really see student teaching as being central to this, you know, that point where the candidate moves from the program to the real world of the school, and the relationship and the kind of where the responsibility lies, you know, with the institution and with the school, and how that, I don't know, just everything related to that. You know, I think experiential learning in this domain is really central. But I realize I don't really know how it actually works on the ground.
Thank you for that, Senator Dembro. We're taking a list, so don't worry, we are keeping stock, and we'll definitely talk about how do we fit this in with the co-chairs. Go ahead, Julie, and then Julie Esparza Brown, and then Julie Reagan.
Thank you. So it's kind of following up on his comment about student teaching, which is, and I put it in the chat earlier, that we have a large amount of students right now that are in classrooms as teachers of record that aren't registered in programs yet, or just beginning their programs. So I think that that's a group that we need to discuss because it's pretty significant right now. And we're talking about what changes in teacher preparation we might need to make because of those changes. And also, I put in the chat a website that has some sample reading syllabi that can be used as exemplars. So take a look.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Julie Reagan.
Yeah, Pooja, I think that you mentioned that the state has some programs from other states that you're going to bring next month as like possible models to look at, or ideas to review. I'm wondering like what success criteria did those states have, or those programs have, that made you guys look at them? Like, how was their success measured?
Scores.
I'm looking at my staff team, and I think the answer is that we haven't done this yet. I think we're in the process of it. So this hasn't been done yet. We wanted to just check for whether or not this is the right path that we're on. So let me just screen share. Erin and Kristen, is that right?
Correct. We have a couple of avenues of research that we could go down. And we're just, I think, waiting for this group to kind of give us a direction on which way we're going to go. Either looking at state exemplars, looking at, in-state exemplars, looking at, specific programs from out of state. Those are kind of the routes that we were thinking.
I would also add that one avenue might be the IES practice guides that are related to teacher prep recommendations. Those might be something for us to look at also. IES is Institution of Education Sciences, sorry.
Okay. Well, I'm hearing a lot of really excellent suggestions, and I think from what I can tell, we're on the right path that to answer many of your questions. Are there any, I guess if there are any other suggestions that you think of after the fact, you can either email me or kind of our the email address of the calendar invite that we'll send out after our meeting, which is a general literacy council email box. Okay. Any other questions or final input before I toss it back over to the co-chairs? Okay, great. Thank you. Co-chairs Fritz and Gardner.
Thank you. First, I just want to thank everyone for really engaging today and the incredible discussions that I had in each of my breakout rooms that I'm sure many of you also experienced. It was really good to see everyone. It's very clear that everyone is coming at this from the angle of doing what's best for kids, and that I think is where we can ground it all, and using that lens will really help us as we do this work.
Agreed. And I would just say, I look forward to learning so much from all of you, and the richness and the passion that you all clearly have around this topic is something we all have a lot of shared investment in, which is our kids. So thank you. And thank you also to the governor's office and to our TSPC and HEC and EAC colleagues and ODE colleagues for all their expertise.
So I think as far as what's coming up for the next meeting, we'll take into account many of these different suggestions and gather resources for you that will help us prepare for that next meeting, and be looking in email for some of those communications about what's coming up next. Pooja, did you have more to add about that?
No, I just want to flag that there's I think an interest to share emails. So I think we want to make sure that we're just being responsive to everybody's kind of preferences. So we're happy to share emails, but I just want to make sure that that's okay with everybody else. So we'll follow up offline around permission on all that stuff. But dates are going to be coming tomorrow for those next council meetings. All right. And you can get used to a practice of sharing some meeting materials, reading materials ahead of time. And if you do have a chance to read those, I think that will help you process before some of these meetings, particularly as it comes to some of the current standards and processes in Oregon. We'll be getting into that at our next meetings. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? Are the meetings going to all be on Mondays, or can they be scheduled around different days? Because this is going to conflict with a class on Monday afternoons. So, you know.
Yes, I think that the biggest challenge is coordinating all of these amazing people's schedules, and we are not going to land on a time that works for everybody all of the time, unfortunately. But
right. Because some
yeah,
they're not on the same days, and that gives us other opportunities.
Sure.
So, just a thought.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, and we will see you all soon.